Alex Mann reporting. Now, if you're anything like me, you may have heard of or read about Bitcoin and been mystified as to what it is and how it works. It's basically a global digital currency that's meant to be an easy way for people to transfer money without being governed by a central authority. But Bitcoin's attracted its fair share of negative publicity. It was in the news again this week, linked to the huge online drug market and the death of a young Sydney man. Critics also claim it's too complicated for everyday use and that its value fluctuates erratically. Consumer Affairs reporter Amy Bainbridge has the story.
The virtual currency of Bitcoin might exist entirely in cyberspace, but it has a very real presence at this Melbourne car manufacturer.
I only really decided to use it when I discovered that we could actually pay our suppliers overseas with it.
We can do that.
In the risky world of staying afloat in the car market, this Melbourne business is looking for any edge it can.
Here, this is the sub-assembly for the whole shop, but there are components inside here that we purchased from Israel using Bitcoin.
Bitcoins are traded through the internet, between people directly, cutting out the middleman, banks. Tomcar is bucking a national trend by making its all-terrain vehicles here in Australia, selling exclusively online to customers that include farmers, the military and emergency services.
We've sold a number of parts to customers in New Zealand who have paid us in Bitcoin, and we've also sold merchandise, hats and t-shirts overseas to Canada and to America. We haven't sold a car yet on Bitcoin, but at the moment it's 24 Bitcoins for a Tomcar.
The reason the company took to Bitcoin is simple: cost.
We purchase parts from Israel in Bitcoin and we only pay a 1% fee. So it's a fantastic way of transferring money and purchasing parts around the world. So we've saved easily 50 grand, and that money can go into R&D and customer service and all of that kind of stuff.
Bitcoins were launched in the wake of the global financial crisis in 2009 by a mysterious computer programmer who goes under the pseudonym Satoshi Nakamoto. The virtual currency is controlled and stored entirely by computers spread across the internet and is completely independent of any governmental authority.
They're created by mining, which is running a piece of software on computers that crunches a very complicated algorithm and sort of periodically awards Bitcoins.
In one of the first known Bitcoin transactions, one Bitcoin was reportedly worth 6 US cents. Since then, its value has increased dramatically. Last year, the value of a single Bitcoin smashed through the $1,000 US barrier and was briefly worth more than gold. And it's since fluctuated wildly as its use on the open market has expanded. This small Melbourne organic fruit and veg delivery business receives payment for 5 of its orders each week in Bitcoins.
Bitcoin seems to have a pretty wide appeal. We've had customers from young techie teenagers all the way through to some retired baby boomers in their 50s.
Orders for Chris McLaughlin's food exist entirely in cyberspace, and so too does some of the money paid for his produce.
A large mix box this week was 0.04 of a Bitcoin, or somewhere there and thereabouts. It's quite volatile, so it shifts day to day. I think the first box that was purchased with a Bitcoin was about a quarter of a Bitcoin.
The price is very volatile, so it represents a risk like any other investment.
David Glantz from the University of Western Australia thinks hard currency is safer than the virtual kind.
There are a couple of things that people need to be concerned about. So one is where you store your Bitcoins if you buy them. People who have kept them online in digital wallets online in certain sites have been hacked. Certain exchanges have gone out of business and people have lost Bitcoins that way.
Businesses know it's not safe to hold on to bitcoins, instead using a merchant to convert the payment to real dollars.
We probably couldn't afford the risk in terms of the degree of volatility. If it dropped by half the next day, which it has done before, then we'd have only received half the money for the produce that we've paid normal price for.
We decided if we were going to do this Bitcoin thing, we mustn't get distracted. You know, we make all-terrain vehicles. That's what we do. We don't hedge Bitcoins. We're not in that business.
Another drawback is that Bitcoin is complicated for newcomers to buy into, as 730 found out. The simplest way to buy Bitcoins is going online and creating a free wallet to store virtual coins. And create an account. One way to buy Bitcoins is using Melbourne's first Bitcoin machine. It's one of just 2 nationwide.
This is the easiest way on the planet to get Bitcoins. You press start and then scan your QR code on the screen. That's it. And insert a note.
This machine is owned by Bitcoin enthusiast Dale Dickens.
I see it becoming a lot more user-friendly and accessible to people that don't have access to banks. And remittance, international remittance, for people that want to transfer funds overseas. I think that's the greatest calling card for Bitcoin.
Hi, can I grab a chai and a muffin?
There is just a handful of real-world places where you can actually spend your Bitcoins.
Any second now it should go. See, this is the bug we run into. So what it's done, it's rounded off that last 0.00044.
So you're tipping me for shopping here?
Yes.
The owners of this cafe in St Kilda decided to get on board with Bitcoin.
It's like people are upset with the banks, or are they feeling powerless, whatever it is. You know, is this another way to start to chip away at that power structure? I don't know. But I don't mind being involved in that.
Hot on Bitcoin's tail, alternative virtual currencies are already cropping up.
We're seeing an explosion of them, and the vast majority of them are junk. They're not worth anything at the moment. But the reason that they're being created is that very slight chance that they might be worth something in the future is incentive enough for people to get in on the ground floor.
So far, that incentive has paid off for Bitcoin investors, but the wild variations in its value mean that while there is money to be made, there's also money to be lost in a currency that is solely controlled by the whim of the market.
As it goes along, it will become more stable. But then I'm fascinated by, like, okay, what's the government and the banks going to do about it? Because, you know, if it really starts to impact on their bottom line, if enough people are trading in it and saying, I will give you $20 worth or 20 milli bitcoins worth of such and such, then it's currency and it's real.
Amy Bainbridge reporting.